Welcome to the Haven for Soul Care, where we provide a space for deep reflection, empowerment, and growth. I'm your host, Brianna, and in today's episode, I'm joined by two incredible guests, Jim and Rhonda, for a thought-provoking discussion on personal development, entrepreneurship, and the powerful lessons we've learned along the way. We'll explore Jim's book, Creative Insecurities, and dive into how humility, vulnerability, and resilience can help us overcome toxic insecurity and step into our true potential. Plus, we'll touch on the importance of patient-centered care and innovative solutions in the healthcare system. Whether you're navigating your own entrepreneurial journey or looking for insights on leadership and personal growth, this episode is filled with wisdom you won't want to miss. Let's get started and dive right into the conversation that has begun before the actual conversation has begun.
Not literally.
I started recording because I thought that story was fascinating. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so we've been working on this book for the better part of, I guess, a little bit over 2 years now, Rhonda.
Yes.
And it's been a great combination. All of my opinions and Rhonda's skills. We've turned this into a book that I told, I have said on a number of occasions that if this book influenced one person, then I would consider it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And I've been very, very blessed with the fact that, I mean, we're getting superlatives about people talking about changing their life and all these other things that, you know, you just couldn't ask for more. And I didn't do this book to make a penny. I never will make a penny off of it. But I wanted to share whatever perspective I have with other people for whatever value that may or may not give them. Mm-hmm. And I'm delighted that you're some way through the book. So do you have any questions that I can address before we charge off?
No, not right now. I mean, I think I've already started recording. So I'm gonna kind of edit through, but you what I love what you just said was when you said, well, I wrote the book not expecting to make anything from it, but if someone could take something from it. And I thought that was really good because anybody, I believe, who's open to learn, I think we should always be lifelong learners, but anybody who picks up the book will gain so much from the wisdom that is in the book. I mean, there's so many things for anybody who is starting a business or who are thinking about starting any type of venture. There's something in it for everybody.
You know, I'm delighted to hear you say that. I think, you know, there's a lot of little aphorisms and statements in the book that I glom onto from time to time. One of which is failing your way to success. And you're, I don't know that you're a scientist. I know you're a teacher, a therapist, and scientists, as you know, they fail 1,000 times before they succeed once. Are you familiar with WD-40?
I am. I actually have some in my garage.
So it's a San Diego company, and I'm aware of the company. They're now in 167 countries with $410 million a year in revenue. And they named their company because it was their 40th attempt to get the formula right. So can imagine if they quit at 39, we wouldn't have WD-40.
Yeah.
And there's so many examples of that where, because I know I was brought up, and I don't know if this is common or not, but I was brought up thinking that on the one extreme is failure and on the other extreme is success, and you hope they never meet. And I think they're inextricably intertwined, that you continue to fail your way to success. And so this book is really all about that, which is, you know, getting out of your own way and confronting all your demons. And I also happen to be religious. I think Rhonda mentioned you are as well. And so are you familiar with the Stephen ministry? I'm a Stephen minister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I can baptize you, and I can marry you, and I can do all kinds of things. And I say, you know, I've been very blessed in my life because I've started 15 companies, and
Mm-hmm.
those companies have extended or saved the lives of millions of people. And I
Mm-hmm.
always say that when I'm standing before God on Judgment Day, I'm hoping that offsets everything else.
Yeah. 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 I think that's good. I love telling your way to success. When I read the title, I thought immediately about myself because something that God had told me, because I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, right? Even as a child, I would look at things and I'm like, hey, if we did it this way, then you know what? This is the company or this is a business that I just always had an eye. And I've tried my hand at different things. And I remember sitting in prayer one day and I was saying, Lord, you've given me all these ideas, but it seems like nothing is working out. And he told me, he said, it has worked out because you tried it.
Oh,
You've
that's
done
great.
more than somebody else would have done. You've
Yes,
taken what I've given you and you at least attempted it. Keep,
that's
don't,
fantastic.
yeah. So when I saw the title, I thought, okay, keep going. I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. So
Well, it sounds like you're a fellow contrarian.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I know this is in the book. I know you probably saw this already, but I was 15 years old when I was working at this hospital in San Diego, and I kept looking at things and saying, there's a better way to do it. This isn't
yeah.
the right way to do it.
Hmm.
And my whole life, of the 15 companies I've started, each one was an original idea because I just felt like, there's a better way to do this than the way it's being done. And then
Hmm.
the tragedy in working in a hospital, and sadly, this goes 65 or 6 or 7 years ago. I
Hmm.
was 15 years old working in this hospital, and I saw all of these horrific mistakes that were being made and covered up. And guess
Hmm.
what? Nothing has changed.
Mm-mm. No.
In fact, I'll share a couple of statistics with you, which you may be aware of, but we're spending close to $5 trillion a year on healthcare.
Hmm.
Yet we rank last among the developed countries in terms of outcomes. So can you imagine all of that money? They estimate about $1 trillion is wasted. All of that money being spent to have the worst outcomes. And um, you can see the background. My latest company is called Patient-Centric Care. And
Hmm.
what I recognized was we're serving everybody in healthcare except for the patient. And so what I've decided to do is to start with the patient, not end with the patient, because I want to do things through people rather than to people. And
Hmm.
that's what this company is all about, which is really starting with the patient. And as you know, and sadly, due to the murder of the guy from United Healthcare, it's a very, very hot subject at the moment.
Hmm.
But we, this is a shocking statistic, and it's one I've gotten validated from a number of sources, including Center for Disease Control and CMS. We kill about 400,000 people a year with the wrong medication.
You So, if you don't mind me interjecting, for one, I have personal experience with that. When I was in college, I had a grandmother who was raising her two grandchildren. Their mother had been recently murdered, and so she had these two twins. They were six, and one of them had an emergency, had to go to the hospital, and was given the wrong medication and died at six.
Oh,
So, hearing her story, and then I am a former chaplain from who I used to work in a hospital. And so seeing medications just driven down, and it's like, sometimes if we just talk some things through, the medication that we're giving out wouldn't be needed. So yes, I understand. When I read that portion in the book, I thought to myself, man, you get it. Yeah, you've seen it, and you just get it because some people can see it, but they don't get it. If that makes sense.
well, and I refer to patients as the incidental patient because if something happens good to you, it's incidental, it's not planned,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sadly. So we have a long, long way to go. Oh, I love that thing on your wall. Pray about everything. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Um, but I think that with wasting as much money as we are, I mean, can you imagine if 400,000 people a year died in plane crashes, we would never get on another airplane.
Mm-mm.
And Dr. C. Everett Koop, you may or may not recall, he was the former Surgeon General in the Reagan administration. He was a um, pediatrician from Philadelphia and happened to be blessed with him being on the board of one of my companies. And he was 92 or 3 when he was on that board. And he said to me, Jim, if you ever go to the hospital, don't go unless you bring someone with you to protect you 24/7.
Mm.
I was in the hospital and my son was in the hospital, and we both nearly died from getting the wrong medication. Now, can you imagine the Surgeon General? I mean, it's just it knows no boundaries at all, and I think that the reason for that is because we're not putting the patient first.
Mm-mm.
And if we put the patient first, I would like to think there's an opportunity to finally turn this thing around because it's so long overdue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the medication thing, giving the wrong medication or just being pumped medications is it's got a lot to do with money. I actually had a physician who, what I did not know at the time, her husband was the pharmaceutical rep. And so
Mhm.
no matter what I went in for, I could have went in for and I could have said that, hey, my eyes are just running and I got a medication for you. I mean, nothing was out of bounds for her. It's like, here, I got a medication for you, got a medication for you. And I never knew that her husband was the medication rep, right? Until suddenly, you guys are probably gonna laugh, because I laugh, until suddenly all of, she left abruptly, like nobody knew. She just left. I got a letter the day that she was leaving, and nobody knows what happened. And I said, and then I started hearing some things in the news, and that didn't have anything to do with her personally, but I figured maybe she knew what was coming because I think they're trying to stop all the medications that are being given that shouldn't be given.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm cynical on this subject, but I believe that the only thing that drives healthcare is money.
Mhm.
It's all about profit and all about money. It's not about doing the right thing. The Hippocratic Oath is in the trash can, and first do no harm does not exist. And
Mm-mm.
it's we are long overdue. I hate to think of this death will galvanize people, but I think that it's we are it's we just have to we have to and when I tell people the number of errors and number of deaths, they look at me like, are you crazy? They don't believe it because it's just not something that they're aware of, and it's such a well kept secret.
Yes.
So
Yes. And I know I wanted to get into the book, but I think this is such a good topic. And I want to share this before we go further. I had the blessing of meeting so many people within the hospital setting, patients that became really what I would consider friends as their chaplain. And I can recall going into one patient's room and the nurses, I was on call 24 hours, and the nurses became very irritated with him because he was having an episode that I guess they were too overworked to really see and understand what was going on. And so when they called me down, I went in and I've have this unique ability to see death when it's coming. And so when I walked in this room, I knew, I said, it's getting ready to pass. He was very irritated. They had just gotten him back into the bed because he had laid down on the floor. Um, he had some issues, psychological issues that were embedded within his family structure. And so I had already, because he was, we had this relationship, and so I knew that some of his woes were family related. And a lot of times we know that stress brings on a lot of illnesses and things of that nature. So I had gotten him back in the bed. So when I walked in, I spoke with him, and I tried my best to calm him down. We prayed, and I said, if you need me, you call me. Well, it probably was 30 minutes later, he coded. Um, and when I went down there to try to assist as the chaplain, the doctor stood in the door and he said, these were his exact words. He said, he is too fat for you to try to resuscitate him. And I looked at him. He didn't see me in the chaos of what was going on, but he was standing in the door, never went into the room until I made myself known. And then he decided to go into the room. And so when you say that they don't, a lot of times it's the patient is not put first. They're not a lot of times seen as humans that go through life, that go through changes, that go through hurts and pains, and seen as real people, because nobody wakes up and says they want to be overweight. Nobody wakes up and says that they want to be in a hospital or to be sick or any of these things, but life happens. And without the proper people that are in your that can align themselves to you to help you work through these issues, you don't know what to do but cope with whatever it is that you're coping with. And so, yes, I've seen a lot, and that's just one of many stories where I've seen the patient put last because of the way that they're viewed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what would you like to talk about with respect to the book?
Well, Rhonda, you have the book in your background. I'm going to hold mine up too.
Yes.
And so I wanted to get into the reasoning, or what persuaded you to write the book. How did you and Rhonda even get together to write this book together? Because, and we're going to get into it. So those of you who are listening, I want you to know that if you do not have this book, I want you to go get this book. You will make sure you have a notepad, some highlighters, and some pens, because I have marked through my book over and over, and I have made notes. I have journal entries and all these things. So, but yeah, I wanted to start with what persuaded you, and how did you and Rhonda get together to write this book?
So we got together as a result of this lady I mentioned to you, Grace Sherrington. And Grace actually knew Rhonda from another book that Rhonda was, she didn't co-author, but she worked with a fellow. He died twice and had a heart transplant. And he wrote quite an incredible book about that whole journey. And Rhonda was involved with him in that. And then Grace was aware of him and aware of Rhonda, and Grace introduced the two of us. And Grace, as you know, lives up near Salt Lake, and I live in El Paso. So we have been commuting back and forth, mostly on the phone over the last couple of years, and then we've had a couple of face-to-face times together. But getting back to the core of your question, I think that what I felt was that I had some life experiences that, I started out like all entrepreneurs. In my first company, I suffered greatly from the imposter syndrome. I was sure that it was a fluke that I had been successful and I couldn't repeat what I had done the first time. And then 15 times later, in each one of these companies, I think I mentioned, was an original idea. It was the first of something. And a lot of the things I say, one of them is being first is more important than being right, because you're never right when you start. You become right, but there's a huge value with being first. And I found so many times when I'm socializing an idea, if I'm describing this to someone and they go, oh yeah, I know all about that. I heard something about that. They've discounted you at that point. If instead of that they say, tell me more, you've got them because they've not heard it before. And so that being first is so valuable. And in the book, as you saw, I'm really encouraging people, not only to be first, but also to go for a big idea, because a big idea or a small idea take the same amount of time. So why not go for the big idea? And so it's some combination of all of those sensations or things that I became aware of, or things that I was able to validate or invalidate, that said, there's something here that, and I think when we decided to publish the book, we were toying with self-publishing, and then Rhonda said, well, let's give it a try. We'll go to 50 authors and maybe one of them will take it. And the first one took it. And we asked her, why did you select this book? And she said, because it's fresh. These are all ideas that I haven't seen before. So that was very encouraging.
So, Rhonda, what was it like working with James?
It was a dream project. And hi, everybody. I've been quiet because Jim has so much to say. But Jim, I was two things. I was able to.
I'm sorry, Rhonda.
Yes.
I'm saying James. I'm sorry.
Oh, his name is James M. Sweeney, but he goes by Jim.
I got James. Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. We should have mentioned that.
I'm also a twin. So because I'm a twin, my twin brother's name is Jerry. And I go by Jim or Jimmy or Jerry. It doesn't matter. You can call me anything. Just don't call me stupid.
I apologize.
No apologies needed. That's
anything is fine.
Friends all call him Jim. So it was a dream project because Jim, one of his core beliefs is in letting people write their own job description. And he likes to put people in a job and then just turn you loose and let you do your thing. And so, number one, I was able to learn from Jim personally. I mean, imagine being able to hang out with this guy for 2 years and just constantly see the way he works and sit in on meetings and watch him coaching people in real time and hearing all of his ideas. And like you said, Brianna, you're reading it and taking notes for your own self. Well, same with me. I'm learning things like the idea of constantly asking, what am I missing? What am I missing? That was one of a core belief for me that I've internalized. Or the idea of go big, don't major in the minors, major in the majors. And so I'm constantly now asking myself when I'm working on a task, am I majoring in the minors here? Or should I be thinking bigger with my time on a given day? So many of the ideas I was internalizing and learning. And so it was an incredible learning experience for me. And like I said, he just turns you loose. So I was hearing everything that he had to say, and then I got to just go write it and pull in research so we'd have these fabulous ideas. And then I went out and looked at academic research to validate what he's seen in practice through his years as a serial entrepreneur. And he just, turned me loose and then gave me the honor of being a co-author, saying, no, I think your name should be on it. I could have been a ghostwriter and you would have no idea that I participated. And that's fine. I'm fine working that way, but he wanted to elevate me and bring me part of the process. So he got my very best work.
Wow.
I'm honored that you let me put my name on the book, Rhonda. Something that I wanted to mention that you sparked the thought. I don't know if I coined this or not, it doesn't matter, but I came up with the term pre-mortem. And you can imagine that a pre-mortem is the opposite of a post-mortem. And I do this when I interview people, which is at the end of the interview, I say, if we are unsuccessful working together, here's my pre-mortem in terms of why I think we'll be unsuccessful. And that's not so I can go, I told you so. It's so we can get ahead of it, make sure that doesn't happen. And so the pre-mortem is remarkably accurate in terms of being able to predict. Usually it's somebody not able to get out of their own way. But then with that, and what Rhonda mentioned is, I don't believe in writing job descriptions. I believe if I give you the job of writing your own job description, it's going to be much better because it's going to be written around you. And I would rather form the job around you than you around the job.
Mhm.
And so that pre-mortem and write your own job description has been really wonderful in terms of helping people find the success they're looking for.
Mhm, mhm. Um, I wanted to highlight, 'cause I didn't ask, I didn't get you to do it, but I'm gonna have it on for people to see too before they tune in. But I wanted to get into who you are. So you are what I would call the inventor of the um the private nursing home health. Is that correct?
I would say it was slightly different words. I refer to it as high-tech home care
Mm-hmm.
because before I started high-tech home care or was credited with starting it, there was low-tech, which were nurses obviously coming into the patient's home. I started with TPN. Are you familiar with TPN?
Yes, self-feeding.
Yes, total parental nutrition. And that's an interesting story, kind of related to your question, because when I looked at TPN, I was at the Cleveland Clinic and they were doing TPN and they were bringing patients to the hospital and feeding them for 2 weeks and then sending them home and starving for 2 weeks. And they were a prisoner of the hospital. And they were also losing their shirt on it because they weren't getting paid for it. So I went to them and I said, well, I didn't go to them. I said, I could do this at home. I could teach people, and this was prior to actually pre-mixing solutions. I could teach people how to sterilely admix 26 ingredients to their IV to concoct their unique TPN solution. When I went to doctors, doctors, they look down, they go, these people, you know who they mean by these people. These stupid people would never, ever be able to learn how to do this. Well, guess what? I trained thousands of people how to compound their own solutions, and we didn't have one error. And the reason was when you're compounding those solutions sterilely, and when you're done, they're going to go into your body. You're going to be a lot more careful than the pharmacist at doing that compounding. And so I believe, and there's a woman, her name is Lily Mae Plazer. She's from South Carolina. Lily Mae has a third grade education, and she was a TPN patient. And she had a dirt floor in her house, and we brought in an IV pump and a generator to power her pump, and we taught her how to mix her own solutions. So Lily Mae is my poster child. Lily Mae can do it, anybody can do it. And I believe that people are capable of doing so much if you get out of their way and let them do it and give them the confidence and belief that they can do anything they want to do. I mean,
Mhm.
it's very, very straightforward.
Yeah, and I loved it, because as I read the story, again, and you've said it, you saw a problem, but you also saw the solution, and you didn't stop until you were able to get to the solution for the patient. I love that about you as a leader, because let me see if I can get to it. It's something I highlighted, and I said I wanted to make sure that I brought it up. It is, let's see, the the fact that let me find it because I thought it was very, very good. Uh, um, y'all, I might not be able to find what I wanted to say. I think I might have lost it, but it was something to the tune of, not only are you putting the patient first, but oh, let's see. But I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it.
While
Um,
you're looking, my grandson went to Grand Canyon University.
oh, you can see that?
Yeah.
I'm glad. Well, good. I hope everyone else can see it. I was proud. I was proud when I got that. Um, but I wanted to ask you. So, how do you differentiate between toxic insecurity and creative insecurity, and how can one transition from the former to the latter?
That is a great question. That's a great question. So the, the the whole thing about creative insecurity is that you can go obviously in one of two directions. You can become paralyzed, which we oftentimes are, and that paralysis will lead to nothing happening. Or you can embrace that insecurity. I mean, I could give you lots of examples. I'm sure you could give me many examples as well, which is when I went to raise venture capital for my first company, I had no idea how to raise venture capital. So I could become paralyzed by that, or I could say, okay, what do I need to do to learn how to raise venture capital? Um, or how do I take my first company public? I've never taken a company public before. So it is embracing that insecurity in a way that you become action oriented as opposed to being penalized. If you're penalized, I mean, paralyzed. If you're paralyzed, it becomes toxic. If you get out of your own way and actually deal with it, is when you have that kind of growth experience.
Oh wow. How would one deal with it?
How would one deal with what?
Their paralyzing that the insecurity that makes them paralyzed versus getting out of their own way.
That's a really good question. Like so many things in life, I think it comes with taking it on head on and refusing to be cowed by it, but saying, okay, I'm insecure about this. Am I going to let that insecurity trump everything else, or am I going to do something about it?
Mhm.
And it's kind of having a conversation with yourself and saying, come on, hey, I got to get out of my own way. This is an obstacle. We always talk about that stone in the middle of the road that keeps us from going where we want to go. And we have to figure out a way to go around it or over it or through it.
Mm,
I
that's
I
want
good.
to
think it
add,
also has to do with, for lack of a better word, self-confidence
Mhm.
and knowing that you can persevere. You know, it, I told my children when they were younger, the old cliche, if first you don't succeed, try and try again. Well, I believe if at first you don't succeed, try 1,000 times. It's a WD-40. It's refusing to quit. You saw from the innovators trifecta. The no quit gene, I got that from the Navy SEALs. Being from San Diego, I was very closely connected to the Navy SEALs, and they are they're complicated people. They're remarkable in certain respects and horrible in others. But um, the no quit gene, they have something called ringing the bell. And when you go to become a Navy SEAL, they take in 300 recruits and they graduate 40 out of the 300. So 80% fail. And what I realized was if you ring the bell and quit, they probably saved your life because you're quitting there as opposed to quitting in the middle of battle where you're going to get killed and you're probably going to get a bunch of your buddies killed with you. And so the no quit gene is this indefatigability, this refusal to quit is so paramount in anything you do. I don't have to tell you this. I'm sure you deal with this every day in your life. Your refusal to quit has allowed you to succeed in all the things you've done.
Yeah. I would call it the I'm very resilient. I take some time to heal from some things that I don't succeed in. Well, I failed, but I know I'm gonna get back up. So I take the time to heal and then I push my way back through.
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Rhonda, you were gonna
Bri-
say something?
Yeah, I want to come back to another way of reframing insecurity.
Mhm.
So when we face something that we feel imposter syndrome or something unknown, because that's insecurity really relates to uncertainty. There's a trick psychologically. We can reframe it from fear to excitement. So if you tell yourself, instead of I'm nervous, I'm excited, your brain kicks into gear in a different way. And so that is a very simple trick that all of us it's a habit we can learn. Anytime we feel nervous, public speaking, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. So anytime we face a new business idea, a new skill that we need to learn, of anything we're insecure about, think of it as a new beginning. And the excitement that surrounds something new, that's uncertain, right? You don't know the outcome of anything new, whether it's love or a new job or a new company or anything that we don't know. The learning curve can be exciting and a chance for growth. So again, that's just a takeaway I hope your listeners and the readers will get, because it's so powerful and effective.
Yes.
I had that experience with public speaking. There was a point in my career, early in my career, where I could not speak publicly. I would hyperventilate and I would start, taking really deep breaths, and I couldn't breathe. I was going to speak to the chairman of the board of this company that I was a low-level employee in, and I was going to speak to the chairman, and I was just hyperventilating. So I decided to join Toastmasters, and I joined Toastmasters, and I had a wonderful experience. As you know, they also have Toastmasters. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization, and I learned how to speak publicly. And now I can speak before 4,000 or 5,000 people and be completely at ease. And I learned something along the way, which is how to talk and think at the same time. So while I'm talking, I'm formulating my next paragraph. And that all came as a result of seeing an obstacle and refusing to give in to that obstacle. And thanks to Toastmasters, finding a way to overcome that shortcoming and having it go from being, I don't know if you heard the story, it's kind of an amusing story that Winston Churchill was asked about public speaking, and he said, if I have an hour, I can start talking right now. If I have 15 minutes, it'll take me about an hour to get prepared. And if I have to give a 5-minute speech, I'll get back to you tomorrow.
That's good, because I can relate to that. I can relate. One of the things that I had read, and it made something, both of you had, you said made me think about the book, something that's in the book. I want to talk about the culture of today. There's something in here you were talking about the culture of today. They go more on what I would say superficial versus what matters most importantly when working with others. If we could touch on that a little bit. When working with others, I like when I got to that portion of the book, because I realized some of my problems is that I was not spotting out who people were. And so it caused me not to go too far in business because of the individuals that I chose to partner with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So when I became a Stephen minister, as you may know, there's about 600,000 of us now around the world. I realized, and I kind of had an epiphany as I was going through the Stephen ministry training, which is the single most important part of being a Stephen minister is listening. And the 3 words that kind of become the hallmark of that when you're a care giver and the care receiver is talking, is to say, tell me more. And the tell me more opens up so much richness that you may or may not get otherwise. And so, but the listening, and I know what you're talking about here too, when you're dealing with people, ego being what it is, it's easy to talk, it's harder to listen. And if you can develop that skill for listening carefully, because as a Stephen minister, we're non-judgmental. There's a real temptation to want to give advice, which you don't do. There's a real temptation to want to solve the problem for them, which you don't do. And the real challenge is just being a good listener. And when you are a good listener, they will really open up when you give them the chance to do so.
That is good. And and Rhonda's really a good listener. And that's what I appreciate about you the most, Rhonda, is because I want to thank you for your gifts. Because Rhonda has the ability to hear and a lot of people can't do this, but you have the ability to hear what is not being said.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, and when I'm in settings when I'm with my clients, I can do that. But when it comes to business, after reading, I took note. You know what, Brianna, you're not taking that same technique into business, and that's your downfall. Like, you're not hearing what is not being said. You're just listening to what they're saying, and that is what I've taught about it. I've preached about it. You know, social media has us on this. Oh, it looks pretty. It sounds pretty. But at the end of the day, it's not really what it is, right?
Right.
Are you an empath?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I can see that in you.
well, thank you. So in I, I do a book club too, so I'm like page 188. But I highlighted we should create a culture that ejects people who pound their chest. And
Yeah.
Yes, yes, but we don't. And we don't. Those are the people we tend to flock to.
Yeah.
So
so-
if I may,
Mhm.
earlier we talked about one way that we see toxic insecurity, and that is in paralysis. But
Mhm.
there's another side of toxic insecurity, and that's hubris. So some people become paralyzed and they freeze and they don't move forward. Other people pound their chests and they try to make themselves look bigger. And that's one of the most toxic things we see in the business world today. And Jim, why don't you talk about hubris and humility a little bit?
It's funny you should mention it. I was just about to jump onto that subject. So the innovator's trifecta, which you saw in the book, it is a triangle, and the no quit gene is on one side of the triangle. Vision is on the other side, but more importantly, at the base of the triangle is humility. And humility is easy to talk about, and the opposite of humility is hubris, obviously. And unfortunately, when I think of hubris, I think of our incoming president. He's the most horrible person I've ever seen in terms of not being able to start a sentence without I. And so, having said that, there's a lot of good things he's done as well. But I think that being rooted in humility is so critical. And I don't care how you define success, whether you published 100 books or you've made $100 million, it doesn't matter. Remaining humble, and not, buying into your own bullshit, pardon me, is what this is all about. And it's, I think it really, to me at least, it comes to the really basic things of thinking I'm no better than anyone else. I am just exactly the same as my dear friend Lily Mae Pledger, who's got a third grade education, and she is my peer in terms of her ability to get out of her own way and do remarkable things. So I think it's all about humility. And it's also because, I mean, we see all the time, for some reason, when people become successful, hubris takes over. I don't know why, but it really does. It starts to, you start to believe your own story, and, and believe how good I am, and I. And I think if you can avoid that, to me, it's the foundation of everything I've done is being able to remain rooted in humility.
I love you said that you start to believe your own story. Can you elaborate on that? I'm trying, my pen went out. I'm writing it down because I'm gonna make a note to myself.
Well, I tell stories because people remember stories, they don't remember facts. All the money I've ever raised was because I've been able to tell a good story that I believe in. And I think that the key to this whole thing, to me, is it is really, well, it starts with believing in yourself, believing what it is you're capable of doing, and being willing to confront whatever it is that's in front of you that's standing in your way.
Mm-hmm. 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 Um, so and sometimes what's standing in the way is actually us.
Yeah.
Usually that's what's standing in our way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I like you know, when you talk about Rhonda, I love that you brought this up because the toxic insecurity of the people who lack the humility, um, oftentimes they also are blocking themselves into going further in business.
I'll tell you a story kind of related to this.
Mm-hmm.
So when I took my first company public,
Mm-hmm.
the company was very, very successful. And it went from $7 a share to 30 some dollars a share in a few weeks. And then Medicare decided that they were no longer going to pay for enteral nutrition, which is a form of gastric feeding, as opposed to parenteral nutrition. And so from one day to the next, they decided they weren't going to cover that anymore. And my stock went from $30 to $3 in one day. And so I realized that I was not a hero and I was not a bum. I was not the person at $30 a share any more than I was a person at $3 a share. I went on then to, over about 8 quarters, get the stock back up to $45 a share. But in you know, and Wall Street had this article on me, and they said, you know, you got to hold your nose and buy this stock. Well, it was in the stratosphere. And unfortunately, stock never comes down slowly. When stock comes down, it comes down with a crash as a rule. And so realizing you're not the hero and you're not the bum is a great metaphor for what humility is really all about. I'm neither extreme.
Mm, that is good. That is good because I've seen it at work. I've seen it in other people, and then I've also seen it in myself. Um, when we talk about the um, I'm neither. So I've oftentimes would see something happen and say, oh gosh, you know, and I will say I'm a bum. I use that term that you use. I'm a bum, you know, and it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Stop thinking that way of yourself. But again, I love because today's culture will tell you that you are. Today's culture is kind of, I call it weird, in terms of how they view one's value and how they view one's success. One business venture that I'm thinking about was one that I got in partnership with someone because they asked me to, and I knew that neither one of us was educated on what they wanted us to do, but it was a good idea, very good idea. It would help for me. The vision was it would help it would better women. It would help them and women that were being abused and of that nature. But the thing was we needed to learn how to flip some houses. And my partner wanted to go head in, and I'm like, okay, we can, but we have people that are smarter than us who can help us. So let's incorporate people that are smarter than us. so that they can help us. And they said, no, we need to learn it ourselves. And and so I'm like, okay. And so
Yeah.
it was a lot of pressure on me because at this point they're looking at me to learn all this information. And I knew in the time frame, I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. So to shorten the story, it flopped. So we had this bulk of money, but by the time we finished, we had zero money. We made no money. There was no profit. And I felt like such a failure. And my partner, she poured out and she was like, she didn't want to do it anymore. And I was like, but, you know, sitting down again with myself and saying, okay, what can you learn? And the questions, where can you learn from? What is it that you did that you know better now?
Yeah.
But getting back up again. And so, but yeah, that extreme, Jim, I've had it, and probably still at times will have it again. Um, and so, again, I appreciate this book, Creative Insecurity, because it is teaching me more um, at the age that I am than I have learned from any other book. And I'm being honest, from any other book that I have ever read on leadership, on business, on this
Wow.
book has really given me wisdom
Wow.
that I have been
That's
able to really eat and digest and just keep at the forefront. And this is not because, and the audience knows I'm not getting paid. I don't
I'm
get
gonna
any
pay you. Keep
kickbacks.
talking.
Um, but I
So I'll
love,
tell you something that I often say, which is, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
yes.
And I want to hire people who are better than I am, who want my job.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a great chance of being successful because you surround yourself with people like that, and that's
Hmm.
the key, in my view.
I think it's the key too. I do. After I read it, I started looking around at my circle and saying, who do I believe is the smartest? Am I taking the time to sit and glean from anybody? So after reading it, I'm like, that is the best advice that I think everybody really should live by. You don't want to be the smartest in a room. You really don't.
No, you don't.
And you don't want to be the loudest either, right? Because you have in there too, learning to be quiet, learning to listen,
Yes.
not always having something to say.
Brianna, I want to comment just two things. Thank you for saying that about the book. My eyes were welling up. I was so touched by that because we poured our hearts into this. And, if you are the one person that this book helps, then as Jim said when we started, then the whole process was worth it. And so I'm really touched by what you said. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. I mean, I really mean it from the bottom of my heart because, a lot of times when you pick up books like this, it's hard, the jargon, it's a lot of jargon. It's a lot of jargon in it, but this from the beginning, as soon as from the beginning to the very end, and I haven't even made it to the end, but it is nothing in here that you have to discard. There's nothing. Everything is useful. Everything. And so those of you who are in business, who are looking to get into business, those of you who have insecurity about an idea that you have, this is the book that you really want to get, because he not only does Jim talks about the very first story. I mean, when you're talking about getting this equipment into the homes of the people, and people didn't want to listen to you. Like a lot of times people don't want to hear us. They think that our idea is wacky, we're crazy, it can't be done. But Jim lets you know, no, it can't. Somebody's going to hear you, because I am a firm believer that if you can imagine it, it's because God gave it to you. And if God
Yes.
gave it to you, there is a way for it to be birthed forth. And so if you want to know, and it's a when I say easy read, I don't mean it's easy, but like that. I mean, it's a read that you're just not gonna have to stop and say, well, what do they mean? No, you're gonna understand. It's good. Like I can't say it enough. And you guys together, I think you did a wonderful job with it.
Mhm.
And um and it's coming from somebody. How many tell us again, how many businesses did you start, James?
15.
Somebody who started 15. And when you read the book, guys, not only did he start companies, he also sold them for a profit to pass on. So you don't even have to, and that blessed me. Let me tell you why it blessed me when I read this, when I read that part. I planted a church, and I knew from the vision that God gave me that I was not going to see this church to the end. And I couldn't explain it where people would understand that their belief is once you start it, you're supposed to see it to the end. And I said, but that's not what God gave me. I didn't see it. So I just worked what God gave me until it was time for me to step down. And people did not understand it, but I understood it. I understood it. And even though I got a lot of negative feedback from after I read this, everything that they said negative, I threw it out the window.
Good. By the
I
way, when we
threw
get to
it.
the end of the book, there's something called the innovator's checklist. And I'd be
Mhm.
really curious to know what, if any, value you get out of that, because that checklist, if you use that checklist for your next idea, I think it'll help a lot.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I plan to because I have something that I'm working on now to something that God had given me. So yeah, I'm it's good, y'all. So where can we get the book?
It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. It's distributed by Simon and Schuster. So if your bookstore doesn't have it, they can get it.
And it's about to be in audio form.
That's right. The audio is in process, so it won't be too long before you'll be able to get it on Audible and anywhere audiobooks are sold as well.
It's Kindle and paperback now.
Yes.
Good, 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 good. So all of my people who don't like to read, but you like your books read to you, you have access to that now. Because I get a lot of that now. People don't like to read. They like the for it to be spoken to them. Um, I appreciate this. Thank you for coming on, James. Thank you, Rhonda. Of course, you are a delight to have. You're gonna be back with us soon again too. And so, thank you both. If it was something that you wanted to leave with the audience on today, what would it be?
Well, I don't want to embarrass you, but the joy of getting to know you is what I'm leaving with. You are one amazing lady, and I'm honored to be in your presence.
You, you.
Amazing, amazing, and beautiful. In addition to that,
Well, thank you. Thank you. I oftentimes I don't know. I just do what God tell me to do. Thank you.
amen,
I love to
amen.
learn. It's really a privilege when I got the chance and I got the offer. I thought, wow, because I'm in the healthcare. So a little background with me, if y'all don't mind. I started out as a CNA, so
Oh.
it resonated with me, and I'm like, wow. And my mom, she's deceased, but I'm like, wow. If my mom was alive, she would love. Yeah. So yeah, I started out as a CNA working in the homes of people. So
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Rhonda, do you have any closing remarks?
I just want to comment on this idea of humility. And I was able, through working on this book, to see Jim in action. When
Mhm.
he talks about humility, he's not just saying it, he lives it. And seeing his example of the way that he treats everyone has been such a joy. And the way that he opens the door for his housekeeper, uh, to come in the, not just in the home, but in the car, or the way that he treats staff, wait staff, for example, the way that he's treated me just elevates everyone. And to me, that was one of the great takeaways, is that's why we're here, is how we treat each other. And that is something we can all learn to practice and be present, to listen, to just have that respect and love for others.
I love
Very
it.
simple. All we're doing is serving him.
Yes. And everything that we do.
Exactly.
Everything that we do. I love it.
I just love spending this hour with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our audience, please make sure you go out and you get Creative Insecurity. Please make sure, look, I'm going to hold it up for you. Normally we do audio, but we're going to do video. Make sure you go out and get your book. Mine is wrote up, written all in. I got my little sticky notes. And so, again, we thank you. And until next time, we will see you back at the Haven for Soul Care. Well, didn't I tell you this episode was great and it would give you nuggets on top of nuggets? Thank you again for joining us on this powerful episode of the Haven for Soul Care. I hope you found what you came looking for. Inspiration and practical takeaways on how to embrace vulnerability, overcome insecurity, and cultivate resilience in your own life. A special thanks to Jim and Rhonda for sharing their experiences and wisdom with us today. Don't forget to check out Jim's book, Creative Insecurities, on Amazon, and visit Rhonda's website for more of her work. If you enjoyed today's conversation, do me a favor and take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us continue to create valuable content for you. Until next time, remember, growth comes from embracing the journey. Faith, creativity, and resilience lead the way. Take care and keep nurturing your souls.